Today, I want to talk to you about how God changed my life, how He met me on a broken road and changed everything. After my divorce, I had something like 80/20 custody of my kids. That period of time was very challenging and painful for me. I had gone from having a husband and a family to having no husband and having to do the work of raising my children myself. Now, do not get me wrong. Their dad was very much involved in raising our kids. He is a good dad, so I do not want to have anything misconstrued that I think otherwise. However, the day-to-day stuff, that was all on me. While at the same time processing and mourning the death of my marriage that I honestly thought would last a lifetime because I thought we were in covenant. So when I say it was hard for 1,000 different reasons. At one point, about a year and a half later, my kids sat me down and they asked for 50/50 custody. Now, again, let me first say that I totally get it. God created families to be one father, one mother. Kids need both their mother and father. So I totally understand the need for 50/50 with both parents, and I don't blame them at all for this desire. But to be honest, I fussed about it at first. My kids need their mother, and not only has my husband left me, but it felt like now my kids. And honestly, it was almost too much that I could bear. I could barely handle it. You see, I do have a strong faith in covenant. I believe that marriage is for life. However, that's not what happened. And I just had a hard time wrapping my head around all of that and what was happening in my life. My dream had died. I put myself through counseling, Christian counseling, and this helped me heal from the enemy destroying and stealing my marriage and destroying my family unit. At this time, I had healed from my broken marriage and I was putting my self esteem back together. I was walking straighter, putting healthy boundaries up, learning that I am actually worth it, and I was walking with God. I was doing the hard work of healing and healing in a healthy manner. And so I started dating, which was very scary and exciting all at the same time. Now, back to my children. This request devastated me. Angry because of the sin that my kids were in this position in the first place. And it wasn't fair to them, it wasn't fair to me. And while I understood and I knew it was the right thing, I was once again angry and hurt. Now, here is where God met me. I went to church on a Sunday morning, like I do every Sunday morning, or at least most Sundays. And I was attending the church that had supported me throughout this entire process. And God had me here for very specific reasons. And I walked into the sanctuary and I could not stop crying. I had done that many, many times during my divorce, during that process, but had stopped because I was healing. However, this particular Sunday morning, I just couldn't stop crying. So, not wanting to make a scene, I left the sanctuary. And across the parking lot was a park. And there were lots of trees and shade, and so I sat down. My kids were in Sunday school, so I had a moment, and it was at this moment that my life entirely changed. I sat under the tree and I just cried out to God. I yelled at Him for allowing this divorce, this sin that had happened. I let him know that this was not what he had designed. My children deserve better, and how could he have allowed this to happen? And it brought back up so much that I had already worked through and processed that in my head and through counseling. I knew that God gives everyone free will. I also know that the enemy comes in to steal, kill, and destroy. And that's exactly what happened. So I knew the answers to all of my pain. I had already processed it. And even though I knew, and that I knew that my kids deserved their dad just as much as me, it was still so incredibly hurtful. And I felt alone in the world. So in this moment of pain, in this raw moment of me opening up my heart to God, and in the midst of tears, I asked God, what are you going to do for me? I told God that I knew that this was a selfish question, but I have watched through so much heartache, and now this. Not having my children 100% of the time was just too much. I could hardly handle it. So I asked, what are you going to do for me? And God answered, that's why I gave you Eric. What? I wanted to say that this shook me. I honestly think I actually giggled because I was not thinking about Eric at all in this conversation with God. I was pleading with him about my children and the broken family and why this was allowed to happen. I just wanted to be a good mother. And I hear the voice of God tell me, that's why I gave you Eric. At this time, I had been dating Eric for a few months. Like I said earlier, I had done the hard work to heal, and once I had done that, I started to date again. And Eric came along a few months later, and I started to date. I tell him he's the only one I never blocked. I was still going to counseling because it was scary to date, and honestly, I was afraid of getting hurt again. So I was learning how to trust. However, when it came to Eric, I never not trusted him, which that is what scared me even more. So God and I would have conversations about that too. However, it was in that moment, crying for my children underneath a tree and asking God to do something for me, and he did. God gave me Eric. God gave me Eric to help me through this change, this loss, which was a very different loss. He gave me Eric to distract me, to protect me, to heal my heart, to laugh with, to have fun with, to make memories with, to fall in love with. It was in this moment that I knew that God had brought the two of us together. And what God brings together, let no man separate. In each and every stage of my brokenness, I can see prior, now on this side, that God was always making changes. He knew that I would get divorced, so he started about 2 years before that happened. I started listening to Christian music in the car, only Christian music. I had a long commute, and I would need that Christian music to help get me through. He knew I would need a job, so I went from being a stay-at-home mom to holding a teaching position prior to all of that devastation. He knew that my kids would want 50-50 custody, so he gave me Eric. Wow. A year and a half after Eric and I met, we got married. I walked down the aisle to God bless the broken road that led me straight to you. How appropriate. God met me underneath that tree. When I asked God a super selfish question, what are you going to do for me? He responded. And he responded in a way that I will never forget. Honestly, I don't know if I actually heard the audible voice of God or if it was just his voice in my head that I heard that day. But what I do know is that it was so startling and not anything that I was ever expecting. That's why I gave you Eric. I knew in that moment that Eric was the man that God had given me. Eric was the man that I would spend the next couple of months falling more and more and more in love with, trusting without any reservation. A trust that honestly surpasses all understanding because it came from God, my Father. My kids are all old now. Two of them are married and having children of their own, and my youngest still lives with me along with my husband's sons. We have a beautiful blended family, one that I cherish and I love deeply. I love being a wife, a mother, and a bonus mom. All of our children, all of them, have survived the brokenness of a home. And even within that, they are turning into amazing adults. Adults that we could not be even more proud of. As for me and Eric, we live a beautiful life, full of joy and peace. What I hope that you hear from this testimony is that God will meet you where you are. In your brokenness, in your pain, in your heartache, He will meet you there. All you need to do is talk to Him. I cried out when the burden became so heavy I could barely breathe, and God gave me a gift. One that I did not necessarily see coming. He gave me Eric. Eric fills every space, my every space. He is the breath that I breathe. It's not always perfect, but it is the restoration that God had planned for me. I just needed to hold on. I needed to depend on God and have faith knowing that He would restore the years that the locust stole from me. And He did. I am so thankful for that conversation between God and me underneath that tree. I am so thankful that He came to me and spoke to me. I am so thankful that I've had faith to believe, faith to listen, and faith to hold on to Him. Because my life has completely changed because of the richness of God. If you do not know God, call to Him. He will show up. All you have to do is ask and have just a tiny bit of faith, tiny bit like a mustard seed, to know that He will. My God is an awesome God, and He is full of grace and He is full of mercy, and He will pick you up when you fall. Call out to Him, my friend. Call out. He is there wanting for you to call out to Him.